Welcome to You and Wellness. My name is Kern Roberts, your host today. Today we are joined with Mr. Rhondall Feeles, the president of the Fathers Association. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. It's a pleasure. So tell me, Single Fathers Association, what's that about?
Boy, that is really no testament of my experience. I mean, people sometimes think, well, all right, now we see where it is now. People believe, well, possibly this man studied social work, he was a social worker of some nature of some sort or something, or advocate all his life. But as if it is from the truth, I was nothing more than a businessman and a father. And I found myself in a scenario where my girl and I at that point in time were separated. And I mean, we were young at that time, and our parents had different religious backgrounds, and you know what that is in your 20s and those things. Your parents want to have an input. And she became pregnant, and I mean, the relationship eventually fell apart. And we started off trying to co-parent, but the relationship was at some levels of acrimony. Go to the house, if we upset, then can't get to see him, or you had to go to the house to see him, or you wouldn't get access to him. And I wouldn't just say, now as I am older, no, I could say even I as well. I mean, because I grew without my father, I was very adamant that I needed to be in my son's life as well. So when I went, I possibly was a little demanding too. This is my son, let me see him. And at that time, you're immature. In those days, nobody talking about single father. What was more popular is deadbeat father. So, I mean, at that time too, knowing that, growing up as a boy, hearing about deadbeat fatherhood, in your mind growing up without a father, you purpose within yourself to not be a deadbeat father.
But then there's the akinment to you not being in your child's life,
Right.
or being equated to a deadbeat father.
Correct.
When that is not necessarily the case.
Exactly. But because, as I said, the level of anxiety, and because at that time, you're talking about 13, 14 years ago, I started that. There was very little information out there. So you didn't even know, or most people didn't understand terms of co-parenting or parental alienation. People didn't understand those things. People didn't discuss those things. So at the end of the day, it's just that anxiety there that, hey, I want to be involved at every cost. So, I mean, sometimes when I look at it now, as I'm older now, and I look back at it, because really and truly, I could say that I may have been the reason or prompted a reaction from my ex at the time for us to even get before court.
Right.
Because I got there and I found I wasn't getting access to him, and it wasn't my right to have access to him and meaningful access. But I was fed up of sitting outside, and I said, yeah, what, I'm going to write a lawyer letter. Because legally, I was untrained. I didn't know what that might have meant. She was untrained. So when she saw the lawyer letter, which was just suggesting that I get to carry him home to see him, I think she saw that as a threat of me trying to take him from her, which was never my intention. And that is where we started to really get bad, because as much as you want to say family court, the court by nature is an adversarial place. So, I mean, as much as they may be well-intended to try to bring together, there's always an issue and there's always a win and a loss. I remember explicitly, at first, I was fortunate enough when we went to the magistrate court that I met a magistrate that was deemed an extraordinary magistrate. And for some reason, she was big on fathers being involved in their children's life, and he was 6 months at the time. And she made an order that was deemed by the family court judge later on to be extraordinary, because she said, this is a boy and he should spend meaningful time with his father. So she gave me access to him one day by me, one day by his mother at that age. So from 6 months old, I had him every other day. And I always say it was a challenge. It was more than I expected. But I always say that brought the man out of me. So in those days, I mean, I was a businessman. I was doing well. So, you know, you have nice cars, flashy cars. You don't have any children to take care of. So, I mean, you're enjoying your life as a young man. So, I mean, I made a lot of trade outs. So you move that big music box you had in the back there and you put a car seat now. You understand? When I remember times you're with your partners on the avenue, linemen, and he get up in the middle of the night, and my mother calling me, this man not going back to sleep, you know. I'm done. So everybody know, don't go on line with me. Don't let me drop you, because your line could cut short. Because if it's one thing, once he get up, I go in.
Yeah.
And I just say, him, Daddy, where is? Bam, I go in home. So everybody know if you're coming in line, don't take a drop with Rhondall Feeles at all.
Lime go mash up.
Yeah, lime got done, you gotta go early. So, I mean, I head back, and it was a really, really intimate experience for me. He was what I didn't have as the experiences he had, with me being his father, is like I lived that vicariously through him.
Right.
You understand? Being desirous to have the same thing with my father. And I think that was an amazing thing. I had him in that way up until he was at the age of 4. And then his mom decided that, hey, he going and start primary school, and you got too much access to him at that time. And as I say, we are very good now. So it's not that. So, I mean, she was immature, I was immature at the time. And when we got to the family court, I mean, I was thinking, well, if I was a prime father, I was thinking, you see, his fathers, all those other fathers out there, bad. Look, I went to court and I get such good treatment there. So now as she took it to the higher court, she took it out at the magisterial level, the family court trumps it. Right. So she took it to the family court in Port of Spain. I went there, I thought that, all right, definitely if the magistrate court did that at a younger age, now as he's older, she'd give me 1 week, mommy 1 week. But, I mean, strangely enough, even though and despite of having a pristine probation officer's report suggesting the same thing that I was requesting, 1 week by me, 1 week by her, the judge said that she didn't see the significance of me and him being male demanding that we both spend that amount of time. And when she said that, my lawyer warned me, because when I saw the probation officer report, I remember I went home and I celebrating, telling my mom, we win. I sure we going to, yes. And on the morning of the judgment, my lawyer told me, don't celebrate yet. Wait and hear what the judge has to say. And then the judge limited that time or removed it from that type of access I had to 4 days a month.
Whoa.
Every other weekend, right? So you're talking about that access was 4 days a month. And it's only after I did law, because I went and studied law after, just to understand this.
Wow.
Right? And got my law degree. I as I said, I was a businessman. I didn't need a degree, but I studied it because I wanted to understand the psyche of the magistrate, the psyche of the social worker, the psyche of the people who had adjudicated, in my view, against me, and not understood themselves the value that a father has, particularly in his son's life. I'm not saying he doesn't have the same thing with his daughter, you know.
Yeah.
That is love, that is protector, but with his son is that hero vibe, that mentor. That nobody can beat daddy. When daddy say, I see it all the time with my sons. My son is very good cricketer, the younger one. And if he is missing the ball, if he's not batting at his best, all I need to say is his name. And it's as if his ears perk up and there's real pressure behind that wicket after.
Serious.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I have seen that. And I think they didn't understand that at that point in time. And that order was made, but I understood after it was because I was the precedent for the non-custodial parent. So if they didn't want to give you care and control and you're the non-custodial parent, you would get every other weekend. Right? So, and I mean, even with studies that we did later on, and I know I just jump in fast forward, but as we're talking about non-custodial, we did a EU report on the family court judgments, and 66% of the times mothers having no different footing financially or when it comes to the mental capacity of having custody, mothers were just based on nothing more than their gender given sole custody, care and control 66% of the time, and the son fathers 32% of the time, and then they shared care and control only 2%.
Wow.
So you're talking about the instances where daddy has applied for custody just as much as mommy daddy is capable, daddy is willing. We only have 2% of those cases in Trinidad and Tobago being shared. when that should be 98%, in my view.
Why is that like that though? I mean, because and this goes into the definition between a deadbeat dad and a single father.
Right.
Because some fathers, and you did mention about the emotional capacity of some women.
Right.
Some women are hysterical when they don't possess the capacity in order to raise their children or child. And some fathers are way more calmer, logical, more, astute to deal with that. And yet the women win.
Right. I mean, some people say it's because it's mother, baby, daddy, maybe, which is also another issue that we deal with, right?
Right.
That's the hint of paternity fraud. So, particularly if your name is not on that good paper, I mean, that's how you presume fatherhood based on these things. You really never know that you are biological parent unless you've done a paternity test. You could only presume fatherhood. So the presumption of fatherhood is if you are married, your wife's children is presumed to be yours. If you are unmarried and you sign the birth paper, your children are presumed to be yours. The only way that you can guarantee that your children are yours is if you do a paternity test.
That blows my mind.
Right? So I think because of that...
And that's in the eyes of the court.
Yeah, well, and that is the eyes of everything.
Right.
And that is really how it is. So I think that is what created the culture
Gotcha.
of let's lean towards mother all the time because we certain mommy is the mommy.
Right.
You understand?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you'll be very surprised. You'll be very surprised that there are a number of fathers that after doing paternity testing, you'd realize they swore that was their children. Some of the children look like them. That's what I tell you. And it's proven not to be the father. So I believe, in my knowledge and my experience, that is where the culture came from. And we've just carried on with it. And then, I mean, we lean to the belief and the perceptions that mothers are the only ones that can nurture. Mothers are the only ones that can care and be soft with children. And I mean, that fathers have their own style of parenting. Okay. So even though they're not soft, they may be a little, they're the ones that you'll see play a ramp and tussle and these kind of things, which is still a form of care. So it's just the way that we perceive, or I would say rather perceived things then. I would say over the years of the association being here, we've been able to address a lot of the misconceptions, a lot of the bad culture. And it was a task to do that. I mean, I put a target on my back many a time. There are many shows I was on television and magistrates call in and say they hate me.
Yeah.
Because of the things that I was saying. But at this point now, we've somehow found a place, the family court themselves now, to respect what we do and to partner with us. To me, I think that is a major accomplishment. The shifting of the social perception of fatherhood and what it is, and also getting the acceptance of the so-called law lords, who even at my instance, weren't doing what they were supposed to do, weren't doing what was right. I mean, I broke down in tears when that judge said that. When that judge said that she doesn't see, and I feel that is what breaks my heart more. Not that the order, is that she is telling me that she didn't see the significance. After I know, for the last 4 years, as I tell you, party it and no party, when you see you pick up small man, just like the woman do, and he had coal in his nose, and you don't know your mother say, you have to suck it out of there and spit it. I say, what? She say, you have to suck it out and spit it. She say, I ain't not doing it, that is your son. And when you gripe and you have to go and get overall and you wouldn't stop crying in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I went through the same way. So the things is mother experience, I was given the opportunity to experience it on my own. So, I mean, after building such a close bond, for the magistrate to not see, I mean, she wasn't there, or the judge rather, to not acknowledge that, hey, we always talking about deadbeat father, but here's our father who's gone above and beyond. And instead of making him an example to follow, we condemn him all the same.
Can we create a definition or a distinction between a deadbeat dad and a single father? Is there such a thing?
I wouldn't say create a definition. I think we need to have understanding of what both things are. A father is someone that is constant, a male that is constant, the biological parent, or sometimes even in some capacity, when the biological father has died or left, that male is constant, that's the protector, that is the caretaker as well, that is the go-to. That is the rock and strength in the house. That is I've heard many children say that they feel safer because daddy is here.
Wow.
You understand? So
Yeah.
that is what fatherhood is representative of in a home. Safety.
You know, as you say that, my dad died last year.
Mine as well.
Yeah. Sorry.
Condolences
Apologies.
as well.
Yeah. And when he died, I legit felt like the wall that was behind me left. You know, and I felt like, okay, Kun, you have to be a man now. This is your time to be a man now. Yeah, I felt like nobody had my back as much as he did, because no matter what happened, he was like, home is home, you know. Home is home. You could come back home anytime, you know. And when he passed, I was just like, yeah, there's nobody to turn to always have that counsel, that rock, that stable force right there, you know. And I identify what you're saying, man.
Yeah.
Identified what you're
So
saying.
now imagine the young boys like myself who never felt that. So you know what it means to you. You know how valuable it is. You, for the first time, could feel it not there.
But I tell you what, though, there or not there, it was contentious nonetheless.
Yeah, of course. But I part of it. That is, I mean, men will communicate or men will communicate. That is no issue. We understand that. And sometimes that is how we choose to.
True.
You understand? Sometimes fathers raise the sons to be like that.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
Sometimes my sons, my older son, I mean, he has a point now and he has a standpoint and why we don't do this way. I mean, and sometimes he's wrong.
Yeah.
At least in my view.
Yeah.
But sometimes, but he keeps coming at it, and I had to embrace that. I had to enjoy that. I had to, at some point in time, understand, hey, he's going to learn the things that he need to learn, and sometimes I understand I need to listen.
One thing I really commend my dad for was that when we did become of age,
Right.
he did start pulling back, you know,
Right,
and he was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
all right, go ahead, make a decision. Go ahead, do what you had to do. All right. And if you really went, of course, you'd be like, that's not the best
Correct,
way, you know.
correct.
Yeah.
So that for me is a different stage of father for me as well. So the same boy that daddy was everything. Daddy was everything. Daddy say yes, he knows. Now the same child is now becoming a man.
Same.
So he has now perspectives. He has also learned from other places as well. He's researched things himself. He's seen things on TikTok and seen things in all these places that he wants to do things in a different way, and he may not want to. Sometimes he purposely doesn't want to follow the exact trajectory his father took.
Wow. Yeah.
So I mean, obviously as a father, you're concerned. You don't want him to fall into the wrong guidance and all these kind of things. But then you live to learn that this is his life. I will always be there to guide him. I'll always be there to pick him up when he falls.
All right. Let me put myself in that place. I just separated from, my significant other.
Right.
We have a child or children together. I'm sure you heard of the saying that, they don't teach you how to be a parent. And here we are in a position now where I'm estranged from my spouse, separated from my significant other. I want to see my children, but I can't see my children.
Right.
She could keep them in, but I want to see my children.
Right.
What to do? How to move forward from there?
First thing people will give is advice, go to the court and access your parental rights, which is something that you can do. But experience has taught me there are other ways you try to utilize first.
But me and this girl, she get on real dread, boy.
I understand. But at the end of the day, maybe that's somebody that she respects that she would listen to. And I often tell people that we go to a counsel sometimes to fix relationships so we don't break up. But I often believe that sometimes even after we break up or when we see we really can't make it, we need to go to counseling to separate without acrimony. If you don't have acrimony, you're not going to get that type of behavior between each other. And sometimes the counsel, and I could tell you from experience myself, sometimes the counsel brings a lot out of you individually and shows you that, hey, individually, what do I want from this relationship, even though it's ending.
Gotcha.
So we're shelving the intimate partner relationship, but we need to form a co-parenting relationship now. So the new relationship you're looking at now is, what do I want out of this co-parenting relationship? The man looks at that, the woman looks at that, and they realize the child is the epicenter. So, but it's not in our culture to do these things. I mean, to go and get counseling with a madman, or you're crazy, or you lie down, you have the view of what you saw, he's a soft man, all these kind of things. Yeah. But really and truly, it's important. And I mean, we have places like the Ministry of Community Development in nearly every community. And that is something that we do from the organization. Now, we don't send people immediately to the court system. We advise you go to the mediation center in your community. And we've sent plenty people there who were very acrimonious at the time, and they were able to bring them to a central place. And they never had to go to the court system. You don't have to go to court for you to make a decision in the best interest of your child.
Explain to me what is co-parenting, because there are people who've heard the term but really don't know what it means.
Right.
Tell me.
I mean, co-parenting is sharing the parental responsibilities and parental opportunities. That is what it is. Because it's not just responsibility, it's opportunity as well. And it's opportunity for that other parent to get to develop themselves as a better parent, and for the other parent to be able to have their external family involved in the child's life. When one parent is shut out, you're shutting out that entire family. Granny don't get to see the child or the daughter, and she sugar plum or whatever, these old people, exactly. Auntie, don't get uncle, shut out of the child's life. You understand? So co-parenting is understanding that we're giving the other family, the other parent, an opportunity to parent as well.
Gotcha.
Just not the responsibility of buying things or contributing, making monetary contribution, but also having experiences. They want to go in the beach too. They want to go Lopino too. They want to go on camp too. They want to do something too, and they want to be a part of the child's experiences as well. You want to be able to go to graduations together. Because you're still a family. You could still be a family, you're just not romantically involved.
Right.
But you both could go sit next to each other and be happy when that child crosses the stage graduating. That is what the child wants.
But that requires a certain level of maturity, you know.
Correct.
And
emotional intelligence.
And emotional intelligence, which both men and women today find kind of lacking.
Correct. And that's why I suggest counsel. You had to get help. Don't think that you're going to, because we are human beings, and emotions we all experience at times.
Fair.
If we hurt with a man or woman, we hurt.
True.
We angry, and all the sense that we have. Some of us could bring ourselves together after introspection, but we still feel the emotion, and that's fine. You know he's a human being when you feel it. Now, if you have the skill and you can bring yourself back to a place of good reasoning, fine. But if not, you have to realize that, hey, I might really need help. Or if you can realize it, someone of your family members. That is why the external family and the support system is so important for persons who particularly just separated. You don't throw more wood in the fire. And that is what the external family is on either side sometimes do. Get him in the court, make him pay maintenance, and on the next side, get her in the court, make sure you take the child from her. She do this, he do that. Sometimes the mothers are the fathers, and the mothers are the mothers, or the extended family throwing fuel into the fire and making it worse. Nobody coming to a point of being mature and having an understanding and realize that you're tearing apart a child's life who's done nothing.
Wow.
The child didn't do nothing in this, The child's life just being torn apart.
Wow.
And that is the reality.
Wow. And so there needs to be a specific, a clear understanding that even though between my significant other and myself, even though things are not working, that should not interrupt the child and interrupt the child's life and interrupt the child's upbringing as a result of what we're going through.
Correct. You see, what we fail to realize, and that's one of the reasons we rebranded Single Fathers Association to the Fathers Association at Trinidad and Tobago, Because I notice, I would say individually, that there's a lauding behind single motherhood. Like if it's something to aspire to be, right? And I didn't want young men and young boys aspiring to be single fathers. We are pro-nuclear family. That is the healthiest look. And no matter why is the healthiest look? There's no version of a single parent family that doesn't involve trauma.
Fair.
Whether it's loss by death, whether it's a family broken up and now faces separation, or whether it's a child being abandoned. So in every version of single parenting, know that it starts, it is forged, it is formed by a traumatic experience.
Wow.
Even when it involves one parent dying.
Yeah.
It's not that you have to wonder if it's not a healthy place to begin. You know it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
So if you know it's unhealthy, you know you have to do something to correct it. You know you have to do something to survive it. You understand? You know, there's talk about chronic disease. When you have chronic, well, you're going to know.
Yeah,
when you have a chronic disease, you have to do something to survive, at least live with it.
Yeah.
And you realize you have this now emotionally, and this kind of disease, for less of a better description, you have to be able to survive it.
So if I was a father who didn't have any kind of experience with my dad,
Right.
I'm a father now, I have a child. How to navigate that, right?
I mean, it's challenging.
I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah, it's challenging, because, as you said, you most times may want to do what wasn't done for you. And even sometimes that isn't right. You understand? Sometimes that isn't right. Sometimes it causes you to overcompensate. Sometimes it causes you to make bad decisions. Sometimes it causes you to be aggressive, to be an aggressive parent, as I said. When I from the signs of my son being withheld from me when I was young, it was because I grew up without a father. And I so wanted as a boy to be a father in my son's life that I was overly aggressive. I mean, not really aggressive, not like I'm fighting and to harm anybody, but I want to be there, and I was pushing. When at some point, if I had someone to guide me, say, hey, calm down. Is there next way we could deal with this?
Yeah.
You don't have to run by a lawyer to do a lawyer letter because she may not interpret that in the right way. You understand? Go and talk to somebody in your church. Go and talk to somebody in your mandir. Go and talk to somebody in your mosque. You understand? Go and talk to the old couple in the area. You see them?
Yeah.
Them that's have all the wisdom. Go and talk to one of them.
Yeah.
You understand? But so sometimes it could cause you, because you don't want, you're so fearful and anxious of your son or your daughter feeling what you felt or experiencing what you experienced. Your protective nature would want you as a man to say, hey, I need to stop this some way, somehow. You understand? There's two ways. Either you aggressively go to try to stop it, or just walk away from it altogether.
So how important is it to have that support system, right?
It's critical. That is what makes you survive, you know. You realize the suicide rate of men right now, right?
Climbing.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, out of 246 suicide victims in the last 2 years, we have 202 being male.
Wow.
I mean, when you look at the reasonings for these things, the number one is most time financial issues, and right under is issues from divorce and separation from the family, from the children, and these kind of things, not being or knowing how to cope with it. So it is a difficult situation, particularly for men. There's a research that we looked at from Canada, I believe, when they say a man is 10 times more likely to harm himself after divorce or after separation from his children.
Wow.
So it's difficult, and this is why I highlight this, so that a man can see how vulnerable he is in certain situations. So when you know you're that level of vulnerability, you should want to seek help, because it's not just in a normal scenario, because that is how you think. That is life. Such is life. Life happens. That is the things we hear. But because you are male, and because of something inside of you innate, it has a different response to you. I mean, an impact on you, sorry.
Yeah. I remember when my son died, I was like, oh my God. A part of me just, where I just disappeared. It wasn't there. But our space is still there.
Correct.
And a separation is like death.
Correct.
Yeah. And when you separate yourself from your your children, you can't see them, you can't talk to them, you can't interact with them, you can't hug them. No more daddy and running and hug up and that kind of jazz. That is play on your mind and play on your heart and
traumatic. And I mean, as I say as well, I've seen fathers who, I mean, who've lost their children in tragic ways as well. I mean, whose children were murdered by stepfathers and these kind of things, like Selvon Reyes. There's some of the guys we've dealt with, Keston Comabach, and we dealt with Amara's dad, Shannon Elite, just recently as well. So, I mean, I could tell you firsthand, we've seen the experience and the way, because I have never lost a child in that way. You will have a better understanding and me to that. But at the end of the day, I see the pain and I see the hurt, and you don't ever forget about it. There are some men we've dealt with who the baby's born 2 days and dies, and yet they never forget about it. You understand? Because they remember all the times they touch the belly and the belly and the baby move and kick. And I think people don't understand the emotional bond and connection a man has with the child. They take it for granted because the child isn't growing inside of him. But I often say that the man is both the mother and he consider the mother and the child as if they're growing in him, you know?
Yeah. And some women will be like, that's my child. You ain't carrying no child for 9 months. I'm like, yo, I expectantly waiting for that child for 9 months too.
I carried you both. Because that's it. The man at that point and any other point, a man understands that he's ready to die for his children, ready to die for his wife at any point in time. I often tell people I will never underestimate any man. I don't care how small he is, how tiny he may be, if and when he's protecting his children. I don't ever play with that. Don't ever play with that at all. Yeah. And I think that's what we try to do in our organization, is promote what healthy fatherhood look like, promote the benefits of fatherhood, promote the things that you want to look forward to in fatherhood. Get young boys who aren't fathers excited about fatherhood. In our day, what we heard was always something negative. Deadbeat father. And as young boys of that generation, it was more haunted of the fact that, hey, I hope I don't become a deadbeat father. Right. But when you see you show this positive perspective, and we had Fathers Association put on these programs like I Love My Community, when you're seeing fathers and children playing, we put on these marches, you're seeing children on the daddy's necks and these kind of things, and men actually saying, hey, we's fathers, we want to be fathers too. You're empowering our next generation.
For sure.
I have heard young men who were possibly 13 when we started, now 23 and 25 now and fathers, and they say, Mr. Feeles, you're the reason I wanted to be a good father, seeing you fighting to be a part of your son's life. He said that empowered me to know that, hey, I must be involved in my child's life no matter what.
So talk to me about healthy fathering. What does that look like, and what's some of the attributes for that? And you know, like, if I struggling, how could I bring myself to that a point, or who to ask to become a healthier father? I mean,
we can, and sometimes I don't blame guys entirely. Sometimes you say, well, it have a protection order, or if it's not a protection order, the mother disappear with the child, or the mother take the child and go into the next country. What do I do? I have fathers like Stan Hunkovic, whose children has been parentally abducted to Trinidad and Tobago, and he's in the US. And every single year, when it's our birthday time, cake, happy birthday, XYZ, YouTube video, sends letters, does anything he can do to stay in contact with them, even though he has such a major gap between him and them.
Wow.
So, I mean, be constant. In some situations, you will be able to do things here. There is legal redress in the court system. You go on, you can apply to the court so that you want access. You do have your parental right to access the child. Once your name is on the boot paper of the child, if the name isn't on the boot paper, then you'd have to ask for a paternity order, where a paternity test will be done. But as I said, once your name is on the boot paper, or you are the husband, you are presumed the father automatically, and you then have right to the child, to access the child. The only way you are legally forbidden from accessing the child also is if there's a court order that you're supposed to have the child or access to the child on particular dates. If there's no current order in existence, neither parent has exclusive custodial power over the child. That's a big misunderstanding. that people have that automatically, all right, if mommy leaves, it means mommy has the right automatically to take the children and leave. That's not so. Most times, particularly based on the age of the children, they believe the home is where the child should stay and not be taken away from the home.
From the home.
Correct. To go to rent somewhere in a different space and these kind of things.
Yeah.
So many times it's a ignorance problem that people don't know what they could do. People don't know how they could get assistance. And I think because we have an organization now that has been helping men and has highlighted the issues that some men have faced, men know that even if I don't know what to do in court, we could reach out to the Single Fathers Association or the Fathers Association or rather, and they will at least guide us as into how we could go forward. And you wouldn't believe how much that guidance means. I didn't have that guidance. And that could stop you from doing something so ridiculous.
Yeah.
That is so important. And I mean, there was a study from Spain, and it's so crazy, a study from Spain that we followed a research from Spain where they introduced shared parenting for parents that were being divorced. And they realized that caused domestic violence in Spain to be decreased by 50%.
Wow.
So what they were saying and what they realized in the study, that married couples that were separated, divorce was enough to carry down domestic violence in that regard. But they were still seeing a lot of domestic violence with married couples that had children that had just separated. So when they coupled it with shared parenting, where mommy and daddy had equal access to the child, domestic violence of all natures plummeted by 50%.
That's significant, boy. That's significant. But then you have some women don't believe your father. Your father's stupid. Your father had take another woman and he gone, teething up the head of the child.
I always speak to women, and I say they're doing it out of ignorance as well. Sometimes they're doing it out of hurt. Sometimes they're doing it, as we say, out of what we call acrimony, because they hurt. Most times they hurt. And I'm not saying that justifies you to do the wrong thing. Of course not. I often tell them, why would you further traumatize your child?
Wow.
You see, they don't see it as that. They think that they're protecting them and they're warning them, and you see, oh, he walk away from me and he hurt me and he cheat on me. I don't want them. I don't want that to be done to them, and that's why I tell them. And I could use my mother as an example, boy. My mother was, to me, Muzzy, the strongest person I've ever seen in my life. You understand? I've never heard my mother call herself a single mother up to this day.
Wow.
And I've never heard my mother say anything hateful about my father, even though he abused her.
Wow.
What we saw him abuse her, and we understood why she had to leave him, but she never further traumatized us.
That takes a lot of strength,
and a lot of prayer. She used to call herself a prayer warrior.
Yeah.
So, but it helped us. It helped us to the point that after she died in 2018, my father came to live with us, right? So, I mean, my brother and I, we have our houses in different places, but the family house was still there. So he asked permission to come and stay and live the rest of his life out there, right? And we allowed him to. And last year when he died, and you listened to the eulogies of my eulogy and my son's eulogy, the same one playing cricket, because he taught him to play cricket. It's two different perceptions of men.
Wow.
Two different men.
Because
to him,
times in the
like
life.
grandpa.
Yeah.
Grandpa love him. Grandpa do this with him. Grandpa do that with him. Grandpa do the other with him. Grandpa. My dad died at 90. If you see my son play cricket for his team in QRC, the number on his back is 90. So that tells you something.
Yeah.
I don't have that experience with my own father.
Wow.
So I often thank my mother for that. Because if she had made us hate him, we wouldn't want no part of him even when he was going in his later years. But she allowed us to leave that door open. Before she died, when we became men, if he passed, again, my mother is a Grenadian. So you come here again, oil down, she feeding him the same way. Just as before.
Yeah.
You understand? Yeah. What happened in the past was in the past, and she left that in the past. She didn't encourage us to hate anybody. And I think I'm entirely grateful to her for the rest of my life.
You're talking about a capacity to forgive there, which some women don't have.
That's what they need to find.
Wow.
Because I mean, we are living testimony of it, and I tell you, we actually, when my dad was there, and I always encourage people who don't have relationships with their father, even if they abandon you, find them and find these stories. Many young women cannot have good relationships right now because they have a horrible relationship with their fathers. Trust and believe that.
You know, I was chatting with a friend recently, and I said to her, you know, I said, you need to have a conversation with your father.
Have to.
So her information from her mother was, you know, oh, you're no good, you're this, you're that, you come from this, you come from that, and da 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 da. And then when she, in her later years, in her 30s, had a conversation with her father was like, no, you didn't come from that.
Correct.
You didn't come from rape. You didn't come from, you know, and your mother was actually more promiscuous than you think, you know, and da 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 da. And what that then did is a perception that she formed in her mind that opened her mindset. And I was like, you know, you need to clear away some more things of what your mother put in your head, because guess what? If you don't do that, you'll be walking around with some skewed perceptions of yourself.
Correct. And skewed perceptions of men too.
Wow.
So, we social creatures. You want to get into a relationship, no matter how much you say, I'm an independent woman or I'm a whatever. At the end of the day, we are interdependent beings. Understand? Look at COVID. We're going mad because we couldn't be close to each other. And that's just the reality. Yeah, that's how we created. That's how we're born, right?
Yeah.
So, I think we do address those things, and I think I've seen that between fathers and their daughters, that feeling of not being there. And sometimes is mommy trying to teach her daughter to be strong in what she believes is to be strong, to depend on a man, to trust a man, to these things, thinking that she helping her, when really and truly you're not teaching her to address with the issue of abandonment, where your father wasn't there for whatever reason, and these kind of things. And I remember many times I spoke in many places, and I had big women, I'm talking about old women, break down into tears and come and talk about their father, and they wish they could go to their father, to speak to their father and find out these things. And I remember this was a man of a different generation.
Yeah.
And I think as I said, my father was 90. And when I had the opportunity to speak to him coming on in the later years, and he started to talk about his relationship with his father. And his father was from French Guyana or one of these places. When he was young and came and got his mother pregnant with 5 children and would never come, and was only known in the bar for fighting. And he said I didn't even look at the box when they brought him in front of the house. So nobody helped him through his drama. You understand? My father could never say I love you. The only time I heard I heard him tell his grandchildren that, but he never told my brother and I that. You understand? And I was glad to hear him tell them that, because he got the opportunity possibly to express it.
Yeah.
He possibly always wanted to and never got the opportunity. And when we reached our place where we become older and we become better educated possibly than them, I think we need to help them. So even though he never said, I love you, I persistently told him I loved him. In his last days.
Yeah.
And he would say, okay, boy. And that was good enough for me.
Yeah.
So, we ought to be able to understand that the man of that generation was a different type of man. And there are all different things that impacted them. You're talking about a time when possibly even race was a issue, when you're now being able to earn income and you don't know how the way they were treated when they started to work, if they had to walk on eggshells, because if you say this, you could get in trouble. If your mother warning you, or people saying don't say that, because even though you're a man, you could. So, how much they may have been emasculated too. So,
and times evolve.
Exactly. We are now men in a different generation where we didn't experience that.
True.
Men and women, we didn't experience that kind of exclusion and that kind of abuses, mental and psychological abuses. Some of them, went through that type of discrimination. And that's the reality. We know about getting what we want, doing what we want, watching TV when you want, coming back out. You understand?
You know, nobody putting whip on your back. And I talk about slavery. Slavery ended just the other day. You know? And 160 years ago. That's easy 2 generations. My grandfather there.
So even if he wasn't getting beaten with a whip, just the stereotypes, right? these stereotypes, they dealt with a lot of things that I think we didn't have to deal with. And I think even for women too, the woman possibly back in those days weren't seen as beautiful if they were darker and these kind of things. And now you have more confident women who understand that, hey, I'm beautiful just as anybody else. So I think we know who's supposed to be better learned and have more information. We could be the ones to be forgiving and understanding and actually know, changing narratives and, as we progress further, have the right narratives for those younger ones coming up to follow.
I see a thing where, something that I don't hear being spoken about enough, where women, so domestic violence and physical violence towards women is a big thing.
Right.
They talk about that all the time.
Right.
But they don't talk about the psychological, they don't talk about the verbal, the emotional, and the mental abuse that women lay on men with their tongue. And not just we don't talk about it, but have a metric or a meter to gauge how much is this and how much that shouldn't happen.
Yeah. It's because we don't have an understanding of it. It's because we haven't been cultured to see it as abuse. And we for years, when you see the culture goes based on the way it sensitizes a society, right? So even now, you'll see ads from the gender-based violence unit with, when you're talking about domestic violence, you see the picture of a man over a woman and the baby and everybody crouched up underneath there. But you don't see another narrative. When we have domestic violence talks like we had recently, there were boys there and I had to stand up and, condemn the panel because we showed all the scenarios of males being perpetrators, which is totally understandable, right? Because statistics show that men are the greater perpetrators. But that doesn't mean you don't show them the sides where they are the victims as well.
Yeah.
So you don't let them, because especially if you have extended the domestic act as we have, and talk about financial abuse, talk about emotional abuse, talk about verbal abuse, then you need to show men also in situations where they can be abused. And sometimes when both parties understand when they are being abused or when they are being the abuser, you're going to see a lot less domestic murders because it starts in those ways, and then it ends after in the physical way. And therein lies the problem. But it is because, and the stats that even they presented at that domestic violence seminar they had was showing how low the reporting of those types of domestic violence.
Because once again, if I was a man and I go and report my wife beating me, or my wife cussing me out every single night, or just nagging me and I can't get a night to sleep or something like that. Yeah.
Is that soft man?
If she ain't hitting me, but I sleeping and she throwing water on me when I sleeping, or hitting me with her belt when I come home in the night or something like that, or making the environment very uncomfortable. All those things are things that we haven't talked about and we're not talking about.
Correct. So in instances where there's physical violence, you could understand, and at that instance, the police has some way they could act because we now cross into a criminal element, right? But the instances where, like we say, it's verbal abuse, like we say psychological abuse, like we say the man being told there what, that is why that man down the road better in bed than you when I used to sleep with him, and that is why you ain't walking no way and I have to mind you. These kind of things, that's the heights of emasculation.
Yeah.
So think about it. What are you walking in the police station to do? You could go and you speak to them, but we have something that is a civil issue that the police really can't do nothing much.
And even the police and all, when you go inside there, the conversation is like, what? You can't take that?
Correct. They're not trained to deal with it.
A little bit of old talk, you can't take. Boy, go from here, boy.
Correct. So I have always said that if we are developing our society, our Ministry of Social Development has a bigger mandate than just the disbursement of funds to the underprivileged. Places like National Family Services, they supposed to see just how somebody know when a crime is committed, they go to the police station.
Yeah.
National Family Services is supposed to have a center because that's where you get all the counsel that you're supposed to need to diffuse, to deal with conflict resolution, to do with all the things we're talking about. If you're being abused psychologically, your National Family Service is where you're supposed to go to get the type of assistance, or one of the places you can get it. But you have to make it as popular, you have to make it as inviting, and you have to put it in the faces of people as much as you do the police station.
Well, look at it, because I didn't even know we had a national family service.
That is one of the arms that is hidden inside of the Ministry of Social Development.
Listen
so
to
they're
me.
in the same building, but when people go to Ministry of Social Development, they go downstairs because they want grant, because they want public assistance, they want the book grant, they want this grant. So for sure, communication is something, and sensitization that the Ministry of Social Development need to work on. But they also, and I have made that suggestion to them, they need, in my humble view, to put National Family Service on a pillar by itself.
I think so.
So people know that, here what? My wife and I going through some problems. Where do I go in the community? We go to the National Family Service. That come like the police station for these kind of psychological issues, family issues. Because where they're going now, the healthiest place that they may go is in the hair salon or the barber shop. The other places is in the bar, the pusherman, and these kind of unhealthy places that when they come back into the home, it makes it an even worse situation.
I think we need to get somebody from the National Family Services on this podcast.
For sure.
Yeah, and definitely, have a conversation about what they do and how they can help, because that will go a long way.
Correct.
It will go a long way.
Correct. They need to have the support, I can tell you most definitely, from the state, to have the staffing that they need, so that they could get, and also get the drawdowns that they need, to have the amount of staff that they need to be able to treat with the psychosocial needs of the members of our society. People fail to realize our human resource is the most valuable resource that we have. We always study about energy and gas, and those things are important, but any other resource is powered by the human resource. And when you see you have a society that expending so much psychologically daily, being a parent, being an employee, being an employer, being a friend, being so many beings, you need some place.
There's a lot of energy expending there, man.
Correct.
And sometimes some people's social battery just go all the way down.
And dead.
Yeah. When I get to my own, I don't have the energy to deal with my children or my wife productively.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So what are some of the shortfalls you see in the court system, governmental level, even from families, from you raising your children to be a healthy father, a healthy mother?
I mean, it's so strange. I mean, you would see bad policy in some areas. Sometimes you see bad legislation in some areas. But you would be surprised how much good legislation and good policy there is. The problem is bad culture. So, I always tell people bad culture derails and undermines good legislation and good policy. I could give you a quick example. For years, single fathers were denied the public assistance grant. So sometimes their wives died. I had a particular father from Diego Martin, 8 children. Wife died from cancer. And he couldn't get a public assistance grant because he was told he's a breadwinner. So, and if he isn't maimed or damaged in any way, he can't get public assistance.
Serious?
Exactly. So when we decided to search the law was very fair. The law was very balanced. It's nothing more than a culture that was created that if a man is the head of the home, he should not get the assistance. And they practiced it routinely for years and years and years. And though the legislation was saying that he should, culture trumped it.
Wow.
And it's the same thing with the court. There are a lot of good laws, you understand, within the family law act, section 27, 2A, which says, hey, instead of locking the man up and putting him inside a jail cell, seize the goods, seize chattels, seize stuff from him instead of imprisoning him. There are laws that say that, hey, if you sit down, I think that's section 27.4, if you are the judge or the magistrate and a man come before you and you could present his case fairly and say, here, what's going on? I lost my job. I couldn't pay maintenance because I lost my job, and you present that. They say the judge should not commit him to prison.
Wow.
So the culture, however, has been the first approach. Pay maintenance, get locked up. If you don't pay, whatever the circumstance, make jail. So the culture has trumped the legislative work. Even though the legislators at the time would have said, hey, let's consider if this is the best thing to do and put sections of the law that will prevent or should prevent a man being unjustly or unnecessarily imprisoned, which will make the situation worse.
Yeah, because if I in prison, how
you going income, right? And if you're in prison, and according to the AG is $30,000 a month to mind you, it don't make sense to lock you up for $3,000. But then you take the money and you give it to the child. You understand? So as I said, culture and bad and carrying on these routine practices and not understanding, and nobody's stopping to examine it and illuminate it. It is because I highlighted these things is why a lot of these discussions are on the table now. People didn't know the laws exist, so people was asking for new laws, but the laws were always there. You understand? People didn't know some of these policies exist. It was just bad culture.
So what's new or what's happening with the Fathers Association? Because it's not Single Fathers Association again.
Our intent now, as I would say, is, and it's always been rather, to change the perception, as I said, of fatherhood. Also to ensure that there's equitable versions of fatherhood in society, those being the precedents, removing the old past precedents, like I made mention to you about, of being 4 days a month. I mean, if you're telling a father, no good father would spend 4 days a month with a child, right? If you as a nation has always told men to step up, then you need to give them something to step on. So that even in the case of where the father is a non-custodial parent, or anybody, even if it's a mother in the rare case as well, even she should not have only 4 days a month. So those are the things that we've set our eyes on. Things like paternity leave, right? You're telling fathers once again to be involved in their children's life, and in the immediate postnatal stage, you're giving them a policy directive of 2 to 3 days. It's not even legislated. Thank God for places like Flow, which has decided to create their own policies that will engage in and allows fathers to have meaningful time, like up to 8 weeks. The telecommunication board as well has extended theirs as well. I'm on the board of directors there, and they've extended the paternity leave to almost about 6 weeks for fathers. So I mean, there are a lot of things that must be done. There's some policy that needs to change policy, and there's some legislation that needs to be enshrined. As I said, things like paternity leave. That's the first opportunity, really. And you have to encourage that father bonding, that father being a part of the family. And I will tell you, mothers are the biggest advocates for paternity leave. Because it's not just the mothers who may have had C-sections and need the father to take the child at some point in time just because she's ill. She's want a break sometimes too.
True.
You understand? And she'll say, your turn now. I could go out the road and relax and these kind of things. I mean, it's a mental strain, or just breeze. Just breeze out. You understand? And I think we have our eyes fixed and trained on a lot of those things. In 2018, we did go before a joint select committee, and they came out with a number of these recommendations. And however, we haven't seen the Attorney General office bring any of it into law as yet. So, I mean, we still have our eyes and spiritual guns at these things, because we believe these things will improve the version of father that we have in our society today. Let the man feel accepted in the postnatal stage, as if he's part of it. And if you look at still talking about paternity leave.
Not if it's, he is a part of it.
Exactly, he's a part of it. And on every foot is unfair to him, because I mean, he makes the same amount of NIS contributions for those who do as women do. Then why isn't he afforded the same opportunity to be able to be a part of his child's life as well? And I'll tell you a problem that I could have seen raised in the scenario very recently when the 11 babies died with the outbreak they had in the Mount Hope Hospital. I could see a group of fathers who were unable to be there with their spouse at a highly emotional time, who were not allowed the time to be able to grieve, because their bereavement leave is like about 5 to 7 days. And I could see a number of fathers who would have had to take every other leave they had that year just to be able to heal, and just to be able to be a comfort and a support to his wife, and to receive comfort and support. Because we doesn't need it too, you know. We can play macho and big and whatever, but I tell you, many a times, I'm sure that man needs to put his head on his wife's bosom and cry as much as she needs
Trust
to.
me, man. Trust me.
Definitely. And I mean, it was because we don't have a good standing version of paternity leave. Those 11 fathers, I'm pretty sure, had to take the bereavement leave for 5 days, take your vacation leave maybe for 14 days, and then stay with no leave or decide to leave with no pay, which will now financially impact the family.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are some of the things. So I say the journey isn't over. We've tackled the harder part, I believe, which is the perceptions out there that all man is deadbeat and all fathers ain't good. We still have the little silos in the pockets because there is an existence of parents, both men and women, who do shirk their responsibility.
True. Well, I wanted to ask a question. So you and your significant other, you're just separated, yeah? Mother, whoever is saying, yeah, your father left me for the next woman. He gone and he leave all yeah, and he ain't paying anything. He ain't leave any money for it. He just gone and whatever. And you as a responsible father, understanding the entire or having a different perspective of the scenario, why you had to leave, how do you go home or when do you have time with your child? What do you tell that child? How do you talk to that child?
You're talking about a scenario where the father given limited time and he now in the space at that time and that limited time.
Yeah.
You have to reassure that child that, hey, I will always be here. You let them know the scenario that, hey, the visitation may have been cut down for a particular reason, but I will be here and I will fight to make it better. And that's one of the driving things that made me fight. I remembered possibly the first weekend after getting the new court order, which was every other weekend. And this was the first time my son didn't see me for that period of time, right? And I have a video on YouTube, and if I show you, you will cry. Because I taped what he said to me at 4 years old. He's 17 now. And even when he got older, he saw it and he cried as well. He said, Daddy, you losing the court. And he started to cry because he didn't want to go home the day after. So this is him the night before, knowing he has to go home this Sunday. And I trying to explain to him why he has to go home this Sunday. And he's not taking my explanation. He's telling me it is your fault. You losing the court. So that broke every part of me, but it gave me the desire to fight back.
Yeah.
And I would say by the time my son was 8, we started doing shared parenting. And you'd never believe who was the advocate for that. My son himself. The court order, my son is 17. And legally, the court order of every other weekend still stands right now as we speak until he turns 18. My son, when he was 8 years old, and he saw his father fighting on TV, and daddy fighting, he spoke to his mother. And he said, Mommy, I want to spend 1 week by my daddy. I want to spend 1 week by you. And I don't know what he said. She called me. We talked about it. And she agreed that we do that from there.
Can you get in trouble?
No.
Could you have gotten in trouble if...
The court order?
Yeah.
No way. Once we... Remember the court just makes an order to make peace, you know. If you can make peace. Now, if I could get in trouble if she makes a false allegation and say that I took the child and I breached the order and whatever. You understand? But long and short of the story, you could go to the court and have it removed. We didn't do it because we stayed true to our word. Right? But you could go to the court and say, what? We've come to a decision that we don't need this anymore. And we're walking away from it. This doesn't confine you to something forever. I often tell people these court orders are the sentences that children serve. Because sometimes, and I used to do that, sometimes I don't get in to see him 4 days a month. And when I gone to have a birthday party, and he don't want to leave that birthday party, I had to suck it up and say, son, you go ahead, you stay, have fun. And I also said, I want to dead when I go in. But long and short of the story, I understood why take him and make him feel unhappy.
True.
And then daddy, I wanted to go to the party, and daddy, You understand? So, I mean, and sometimes that's used against her because at the point, sometimes she realized I used to do that at that point, and every time I come in film, she tells him, where you going somewhere. And eventually, even he figured it out. So he started to say, well, nah, I don't want to go. I'm waiting for daddy to come. Because he started to realize, when I go movie town when daddy, on the day daddy's supposed to come, I'm not getting to go by daddy. Children are very intelligent. You know?
Very intelligent.
Very, very intelligent. And they, if they see you fight, they will fight with you.
Oh, gosh, man.
Trust and believe.
Yeah, man. Mr. Feeles, I want to thank you for joining us on You and Wellness.
Yeah. Anytime. Thanks
thank you so much. We'll definitely have you back to have more conversations on what fathers and families going forward.
Thanks for having me.
Guys, I'm Kuhn Roberts. I'm your host for You and Wellness. Thank you for joining us.